Hello again, hope everyone is doing well. Today's video, I'm going to be going through who I see as the top 10 footballers since 2000. I made a similar list like this last year. There has been a couple updates, so I thought I should make an update video to reflect this. A couple ground rules. Firstly, they have to have debuted in 2000 or afterwards. So for example, Adam Goodes, he probably would have been on this list, but he debuted in 1999, so he isn't included in this list for me. Secondly, I'll be going through the list 10 to 1, and then afterwards I'll be going through some unlucky people who have missed out. There's a short list of those, about 6 to 8 people, so I'll get to those after the top 10. Thirdly, I'm pretty confident in my list, so any comments or people you think who should be in there, definitely comment below and tell me where I might have gone wrong, but I'm pretty confident in this. I definitely use this to decide who I want to invest in footy card wise as well, so that's the connection between the two. I look at it from a footy card lens, but also I love just reminiscing and placing people in history where I think their careers are going to end up. So let's start with number 10. In 10th spot, I've got Matthew Pavlich. Some of his accolades: he's a 6-time All-Australian. Notably, that includes a All-Australian at fullback, in the forward line, or a few on the forward line, and then one on the wing as well. So he's definitely a jack of all trades, one of the best swingmen and utility players in the history of the AFL. So we've got the 6 All-Australians, and then also 700 goals to go with that, which is crazy considering he started his career at fullback. So he's snugly in this 10th position, even though he didn't have any team success. Going on to number 9, I've got Joel Selwood, a recent retiree. He's almost the exact opposite. He had a whole lot of team success. He was a 4-time premiership player over his 355 games, but also he had a lot of individual success. He was a 6-time All-Australian. He received 214 Brownlow votes over his career, which is the 7th most of all time, which is surprising to me. I saw him as more of a team player, and I still do. I don't think his individual heights match the people below him, and even probably someone like Pavlich is more individually great, but what Selwood did for that Geelong team, he definitely deserves this 9th spot. Moving into number 8, another team great, but with a bit more personal brilliance than Selwood, in my opinion, and we've got Scott Pendlebury. Pendlebury is still playing, but he is a 6-time All-Australian, 215 votes, so that makes him equal 5th all-time in the Brownlow tally. He has won a Norm Smith, a premiership player obviously, and he is 358 games and counting into his AFL career. There's not much more to say there. It's an amazing resume, and we'll have to see what he does in the last couple of years of his career because he's still playing great footy. Moving into number 7, we have Nat Fyfe, the 2-time Brownlow winner. His resume is a bit shorter because he hasn't played as many games due to injury, and he does still have a few more years left in his career, but just his peak is was just unbelievable. There were 3 seasons he was probably the best or very close to the best player in the AFL. He won the 2 Brownlows, as I mentioned, but he also won 2 MVPs, one of these not being in a Brownlow year. So yeah, there was 3 years he was at the absolute peak of the AFL, but he only has 3 All-Australians. So his career is very high-end, but not as consistent as someone like Joel Selwood or Scott Pendlebury. And personally, I take this longevity into account a lot, because it does a lot for team success as well. I mean, Fyfe has never won a premiership. Freo team's looking great for next year, and hopefully he can get one next year. But for my list, you have to have those moments and seasons of greatness, but also sustain this over a long time. So that takes us on to number 6. I've got Nick Riewoldt in this position. Definitely someone who was brilliant, but sustained this over his whole career. He was a 5-time All-Australian. He kicked 718 goals over 336 games. And he actually won an AFL MVP as a forward, which I don't think has been done since 2000, except for him. So he's definitely a special player in modern AFL history. There was a few years in the early 2000s which he was the favourite for the Brownlow a couple years running, which is crazy. Nowadays, that would never happen as a forward. Probably the most similar player to that now is Jeremy Cameron, who's in talks for the best player in the league. But Riewoldt was doing this for years and years on end, so definitely deserves his spot at number 6. Moving on to the top 5, we have Patrick Dangerfield in 5th spot. This might be an unpopular decision. I'm a huge fan of Dangerfield myself, I will say that. But his accolades really speak for themselves. He's got 8 All-Australians, which is tied for the most of all time in AFL history. He's got 236 Brownlow votes. This is 3rd of all time. And he's got the premiership from last year, 1 Brownlow, 1 AFL MVP. He's played 300 games and counting, and he's kicked 316 goals, so more than a goal a game as a midfielder. I'm not going to say any more because, like I said, I am a bit biased and I don't want to sell him too hard. And just for transparency as well, I have pretty much all these players in footy cards, so I'm not just trying to pump their legacy because of that. I want to be completely transparent with that. But it's not a fact that I have their cards so they're in this list. It's a fact of they're on this list, therefore I want their cards. So it's kind of backwards that way. In fourth spot, we've got the most popular player since 2000 in Dustin Martin. Dusty has the 4 All-Australians, but more importantly, he's a big-time player. He's got the 3 premierships and 3 Norm Smiths, which is pretty unheard of before Dusty came about. He's won the Brownlow once, he's got 1 MVP, and he's kicked 303 goals in his career at about 1.1 to 1.2 goals a game, which is elite for a midfielder. He's 9th all-time in Brownlow voting at 204 votes, and he's just an icon, a legend of the game. At 4th, people might think this is a bit too low for him. You might think he deserves to be in the top 3, and status-wise, he definitely does. But his resume-wise, I think if he has another couple great years at the top of the AFL, then he could definitely push forward past the next 3 players. But at the moment, he isn't quite there, I think. He could be in 3rd spot, but definitely not top 2. So number 3, we have a West Coast and Carlton legend, Chris Judd. Chris Judd has 6 All-Australians, 210 Brownlow votes. That puts him 8th all-time, 1 premiership, 2 Brownlows, 1 Norm Smith, and 2 MVPs. And notably, both of these MVPs came in non-Brownlow seasons, so arguably he was the best player in the league over 4 different seasons. It's very easy to forget how good Judd was. He definitely changed the game in the midfield, and he's one of the silkiest players I've ever had the pleasure of watching. His highlights are stuff of legend. And I think he has been forgotten a bit just because people have recency bias and love watching the players of today and the young players coming up, which I completely understand. But it's good not to forget how great he was in his heyday. So that takes us into the top 2. In 2nd spot, we've got Lance Franklin. And I have to say, I think these top 5 really are just locked in for me as the best players since 2000, that being Danger, Dusty, Judd, Franklin, and the one to come. But yeah, I think they have quite a margin over the next players. But going back to Franklin, he's kicked 1,000 goals. That will probably be never seen again. He's got the 8 All-Australians, equal most all-time, 186 votes, which is a huge amount for a forward, and that makes him 14th all-time in Brownlow voting. He's got 2 premierships, 4 Coleman medals, and yeah, 1,000 goals, like I said. That alone probably puts him into the top 2. But finally, in number 1 spot, you probably know who it is, but it's Gary Ablett Jr. His resume is definitely the best out of everyone's, and on paper, he's just a world above everyone else, although Buddy is probably close in reality and impact on the game. Ablett has 8 All-Australians, 262 Brownlow votes, number 1 all-time, 2 premierships, 2 Brownlows, 5 AFL MVPs, nuts, and 357 games and 445 goals. So that finishes up my list. I want to quickly mention the people who were unlucky to miss out. I put up a graphic of their names now, but we've got Luke Hodge, Dane Swan, and Sam Mitchell. These are the 3 that are probably the most unlucky to miss out, in my opinion. They all had huge careers, and it was sad to leave them off this list. I also got to mention the best ruck and the best back of this era, being Dean Cox and Alex Rance, respectively, because these guys never get the plaudits they deserve. And they're not top 10, let's be honest, but they definitely deserve to be mentioned. Next, we've got 2 up-and-coming players, which very well might be in this list in 5 to 10 years, which is Marcus Bontempelli and Patrick Cripps. And then 2 forwards, which I think deserve a mention, Tom Hawkins, who's had an unbelievable last 5 years and full career, and Jack Riewoldt as well. Okay, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next video. Cheers.